ready to write Penrith off, that's for sure. That's the first thing I'll say. Latrell Mitchell certainly made his presence felt, especially towards the back end of the game, throwing that pass. Got a question mark on the pass, whether it was forward or not. Never give up. It is never over.
Ready now for another edition of the Billy Slater Podcast. So much to talk about after round 5 of the NRL. Boy, there were some good games, some good tough games, but a couple of games where the scoreboard kept ticking over as well, and quite a few talking points to come out of the weekend. And we're here all thanks to Tab. How are you, Billy?
Good morning, Salty. I'm well, thank you. A couple of close games, and no team in the NRL have gone through with no wins. I don't know how do you say that, but every team has won a game now. So the Eels and the Dolphins hit the scoreboard on the NRL ladder, and they're off to the races. So, yeah, it was a good weekend of footy, and the Bulldogs still flying high up top, undefeated going into the bye. The Dogs are having a party.
Yeah, they are. And before we get into what we saw over the weekend, you mentioned the bye this week for the Bulldogs, and then the following week is the traditional Good Friday clash when they take on South Sydney.
Wow.
Who knows what sort of crowd we'll get for that one? It'll be massive.
Fill it up. Fill up a core stadium. Come on. Hopefully we get some good weather, and both teams are up and about. They're both in the top 4. How good. 2 traditional Sydney clubs that have a great rivalry on Good Friday, and wow, the Dogs, they just keep impressing. They kept Newcastle to 0. Newcastle had their dramas throughout the game, but to keep the opposition to 0, that would be a proud effort from Coach Seraldo going into the bye.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll talk about all of the games following round 5 of the NRL. And as I said, a lot of the talking points over the course of this week's podcast. Got some really interesting viewer questions as well to get to a little bit later on. But first up, Billy, yesterday afternoon at Brookvale, where Melbourne, that was a statement-like performance against Manly, particularly that period in the first half where they scored the 3 tries, and then the blitz in the second half. Wow.
Yeah, they flexed their muscle, Melbourne, didn't they? Up against a team that love scoring points themselves, and especially at Brookvale. Manly have had 2 games before this one at Brookvale, and both times they scored 40 points or more. And Melbourne went there with a real steely mindset to go after the game in terms of the attack, and they were brilliant in the opening stages of the game. Kicked out 3 tries and just really dominated. I thought Manly fought hard the back end of the first half, and then to start the second half, Melbourne were controlled. They had great balance to their game, but they still were really dangerous and put points on the board. It was an impressive victory coming off their loss last week against the Dragons.
Billy, I know that you are here on your Channel 9 hat and not your Queensland coaching hat. Never want to give too much away. So you could just give us a wink or a nod or something. Jack Howarth. He mustn't be far away. I don't think you have to comment on that from an origin point of view, but we're realising this potential that Craig Bellamy and everyone at the Melbourne Storm have known for a long time, the sort of footballer they have here in Jack after his breakout year last year. He's had a terrific start this year.
Well, I do follow you on Twitter, Salty, so I know you're a big Jack Howarth fan. I know if you're tweeting about an individual player, you like what you see. And look, Jack's a wonderful player. He's a good person. I know Jack personally from my time down at Melbourne here. He's a player he's always had that X factor that would suit representative football. He's a big lad. He can play back row. He can play in the centres, and he's doing a wonderful job. I thought he had a breakout season last year on that run to the grand final, and he's still learning a lot about the game. Playing outside Cameron Munster certainly helps both with the footy and defensively. So, certainly not beyond him in the future. But at the moment, he's continuing his development at the Melbourne Storm, and he's doing a wonderful job.
a thought on Manly and what was your thinking just on the Seagulls? That they ended the first half really well, and everyone thought, well, hang on, they got a bit of momentum here going into the second half, where they love running to that end of the ground. It was almost like running downhill for them. So, what was your take on the Seagulls' performance?
I thought they did a really good job to get themselves back into the game. It was 18-2 at one stage in that first half. And then they created a fair few opportunities against Melbourne at the back end of that first half. They just couldn't turn those opportunities into points. And there's one guy that certainly would have helped. And don't underestimate the impact of Tom Trbojevic and what he could have done yesterday with those opportunities. And Lehigh Hopewadi's a great player. He's definitely in the team somewhere, but the footy IQ of Tom Trbojevic and the ability of him to be able to turn half chances into 4 points and then create those half chances for other players. I just think he makes a huge difference. So yeah, Manly, I thought there was periods in the game where they did a really good job, but they certainly missed that top end quality of Tom that just turns them into points, and it would have been a lot closer than it was on the scoreboard.
All right, so Melbourne, very good yesterday. Billy, you've already touched on the Dolphins over the weekend, getting a win for the first time for Christian Wolf. I saw Felice Kafusi presenting the coach with the game ball. It was his first win as a NRL coach, so well done to Christian Wolf. And you've made mention of the hammer and his start of the season and the Dolphins needing to give him opportunities. Well, they gave him some opportunities on the weekend. He grabbed them with both hands.
Yeah, they got the basics to the game right, and that's what they've done over the last couple of years under Wayne Bennett is really nailed the basics to the game, and that gives themselves a chance to be in every contest, and they did that. I thought that was the best performance of the year for them, obviously, because they got their first victory. Isaiah Katoa continues to impress. He's a wonderful player. I thought Max Plath through the middle of the field was great, but everyone plays their role. Everyone does their job, and it was a pretty dominant victory against the Titans. So, they're on the score sheet. And Christian Wolf, congratulations. It's his first NRL victory as a head coach. And, onwards and upwards from here for the Dolphins. That's got to be their benchmark now, and they've got to continue that run.
Des Hasler at the Titans not happy, particularly with the Tino Fa'asuamaleaui sin bin. So using that one, Billy, to bring up what we saw over the weekend, half a dozen or so sin bins that we saw. What was your take on this? Do we call it a mini crackdown over the weekend?
Well, it must have been mini because it finished on Sunday. There were plenty of high contacts on Sunday that were dealt with the way I thought it should be dealt with. If it was a penalty, it's a penalty. If it's on report, it's on report. If it's really severe, go to the sin bin. I get that. And there was no sin bins yesterday in both games. There was the occasional high contact, which was dealt with appropriately. So, hopefully we've found that middle ground. I think at the start of the weekend, it was a little bit over-policed, which is what the NRL were trying to do, given that there was 4 incidences the week before that were under-policed. So, I really feel for the match review officials not the match review, the officials on the field. They've got a job to manage the game, but we're also giving them the job to be match review committee on the run as well. And it's too hard for them. And I feel they've got it right on Sunday. Hopefully we can continue with that.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That's for sure. So well done to the Dolphins on getting a win, but the Titans, they've got to come up against the Dragons this week. And a Dragons team, Billy, that thought they had the 2 points probably in the bag, leading 20 points to 8 against the winless Parramatta. But, what about the end of this game? And it was always going to be one former favourite son for either club that was going to come out on top, and it was Zach Lomax and the Eels.
They did. They had it in the bag. It was on the bus, and it was heading out of CommBank Stadium, and then the Eels come back. They were 12 points up with half an hour to go, and with the experience in the key positions that the Dolphins have, it should have been done and dusted. And they'll look back and it'll be burning the Dragons this one. I thought the two players that were coming up against their former clubs, Clint Gutherson and Zach Lomax, were outstanding. Obviously, big occasions for them. We saw the emotion on Zach Lomax at the end of the game, and a big moment for him, not only to kick the winning field goal, but had a couple of crucial goal kicks as well. The penalty goal from 40 out to put them in front. To put them level, and also the kick from the sideline, which he kicked to put them within striking distance. So, there was a couple of big moments for Zach Lomax, and really happy for Jason Riles and his team. They've been fighting hard the last few weeks, and they haven't been getting the rewards with the 2 points, but they got it on the weekend, and be a happy place at Parramatta this week.
Yeah, you think about it, don't you? And you go 5 weeks. It doesn't seem like long, but if you haven't won a game after five weeks, you start thinking, oh boy, this is going to be a long haul. And you said it right at the top. Isn't it great that every team now has at least experienced a win?
I've been there. 5 weeks on the trot without a win, and it feels like an eternity. And the pressure just keeps building and building, and without even consciously knowing it, you drift into results mode and results driven actions, and it's so where you shouldn't be as a rugby league player, as a coach. And when you are winning, you are not focusing on the results actions. You're focusing on they call it the process, which is where you can improve, and the things that help set your game up, and the teams that are on top. That's why winning becomes infectious, because that's what it allows you to push your mind towards, rather than being stuck in, we just have to win this game. So Jason Riles and his team can just breathe a little bit easier this week. So can Christian Wolf and the Dolphins.
Yeah, so well done to all the Eels fans. They got their first win of the season. Now, Latrell was back in a big way for the Bunnies over the weekend. Their start to the season, Billy, we shouldn't be surprised, should we? With old Wayne just up to his tricks, doing what he usually does, and South Sydney. That was one of the great wins, wasn't it? Given what happened throughout the course of the game. Yeah,
absolutely. They lost both their halves and they lost their winger. They're three positions that you don't have a whole heap of coverage on the bench for. Usually you cover, middle forwards, maybe a back rower as well, and maybe a dummy half. And they did a wonderful job to get themselves back in the game. They're doing exactly what the Dolphins have done over the last couple of years. They're just getting the basics right. They're playing the simple game. They're not beating themselves, and that's what Wayne Bennett coach teams do. They make sure that they're in the game and they're not beating themselves. So Latrell Mitchell certainly made his presence felt, especially towards the back end of the game, throwing that pass, right to left. It was a wild old pass, and anything could have happened. Dom Young could have run the length and won the game for the Roosters. But, when you're courageous enough to throw that ball, occasionally good things will happen, and he's won the game for his side. I've got a question mark on the pass, whether it was forward or not. But at the end of the day, you make your own luck, and Latrell certainly does that.
Yeah, we'll bring up forward passes a little bit later on, because there's a viewer question in regard to forward passes as well, and the doubt and the debate over that pass probably leads to why we don't have the bunker getting involved in forward passes. But anyway, we'll get to that a little bit later on. Another big talking point, Billy, are the Panthers. Obviously, a lot of the reaction to this one is Penrith going down for their fourth loss in a row, but Cowboys started this game really well. They went there to play at CommBank on Friday night and came away with the 2 points. So you can look at this from either point of view.
Yeah, the Cowboys, that pressure's just released from the Cowboys at the minute. They started the season with 3 consecutive losses, and then they've gone back-to-back wins. And they've worked really hard. They've done a great job to get themselves back in contention for the season, the Cowboys. I want to give one player a bit of a rap, and it's about his defence, but it's actually his smarts in his defence, and that's Scott Drinkwater. The last couple of weeks, they've been leading by 4 points towards the end of the game. Against the Raiders last week, Xavier Savage made a line break down the right-hand side of the field, and it was a 2-on-1. He had one of his teammates on the inside. It was a simple draw and pass, but the ability Scott Drinkwater has to put the ball carrier in two minds, whether to pass it or whether to run, and then made the tackle. That was a game-saving moment right at the death of the game. That would have actually won the game for the Raiders. He would have scored pretty much under the post, and they would have kicked the goal to win by 2 points. In the game on the weekend, Casey McLean goes down the left-hand side of the field, and he does the exact same thing. He just puts him in two minds, makes him think he's going to go for the ball support player, and then goes back and makes the tackle, leading by 4 points. I think it was about 5 minutes to go. And you can bet your last dollar that Nathan Cleary would have kicked the goal. The Cowboys could dead set be 0-5, and all because of Scott Drinkwater's smarts and his defence that has saved the game right at the death. So I'm sure they're applauding a lot of things they're doing well at the Cowboys in their reviews. They head over to Perth this week, but Scott Drinkwater, he's saved the game on a couple of occasions.
Yeah, great pick up there, Billy. He's a terrific player, isn't he, Scott Drinkwater? And have you found that with his attack in the last couple of weeks, off the back of I suppose a couple of those defensive reads, that he's not going for that huge play? It just seems as though be that little bit measured. Whereas, and it probably goes back where you were talking about a few minutes ago, where when you get those losses, panic starts to set in and etc. Yep. But just feels that little bit more comfortable now and a bit more calculated at the moment with their attack, combining with his 6 and 7.
Yeah, I think it's still a work in progress. Look, there's so many new faces in the Cowboys. Val Holmes has left. Young Purge, who's a wonderful player, playing in the centres. They got two new back rowers that weren't there last year. So there's still a bit of continuity within the footy team that they're still working out. And Scott Drinkwater he's the key to their attack. He's the guy that's willing to throw that final pass. He's willing to pull the trigger when, a little bit like Latrell, when most people wouldn't. And he is getting that balance. He's a bit more mature now and a bit more experienced in his NRL career. And naturally, that's what happens when you get more experienced. You're a bit more measured, and you come up with the percentage plays a lot more often than you did when you were young. So he's going through that transition right now, and he doesn't get a whole heap of raps for his defence, but doing a wonderful job in that aspect of the game as well.
Your thoughts on Penrith?
I'm not ready to write Penrith off, that's for sure. That's the first thing I'll say. They're a team over the last 5 years that haven't beaten themselves, and in consecutive weeks they've made 16 errors back to back. So that's beating yourself when you make uncharacteristic errors from players that we haven't seen these sort of errors from in years. And Nathan Cleary was back on the weekend. He made a difference, obviously looked more fluent with the football, but still they find themselves on the wrong end of the scoreboard. There are certainly concerns there. There are defensive concerns and obviously the ball control concerns, but I don't think it's beyond them to turn it around. I really think that Dylan Edwards comes back this week. They're not far off getting it right, and they're that good that they can get it right and go on a run. I heard Brad Fittler say in 2002 the Roosters were 1-4 after 5 rounds, and they won the comp. And I'll just say in 2012, we talk about 5 losses on the trot. 2012, we lost 5 in a row in the middle of the year, and we held the trophy up at the end of the year. So you're a brave man or woman to write the Panthers off right now. They've got too much class, and they've got too many good habits in not their recent performances, ingrained in their footy team to put a line through them right now.
All right, and we get to see them on Thursday night this week against the Dolphins, and that turns into now a very big game for both clubs. So looking forward to that. And actually, you just got me thinking. There are a number of teams throughout, their premiership years that have lulls, whether it be at the start, the middle, or indeed near the end. Sorry to bring this one up, but I think Brisbane lost
Cowboys,
5 in a row.
The Cowboys
after...
in 2015.
Yeah?
I'll tell you a story about the Cowboys in 2015. We went up to Townsville and played them in round 4. They were 0-3.
There you go.
They were 0-3 after 3 rounds in 2015, and we were leading by 7 points. I'm going to say 3 minutes to go. One man pulled him out of the fire.
Oh, who would that have been?
I wonder who that was. Jonathan Thurston set up a try. He kicked the goal from probably the sideline, I can't remember, and then goes back down the very next set and kicks a field goal to send it to Golden Point. And guess who seals it in Golden Point? Jonathan Thurston.
Oh, Jonathan Thurston.
Matt Scott. He probably laid the platform for him and played the ball. But Jonathan Thurston, in the match-winning field goal in Golden Point, kicked it between 2 Melbourne Storm players that were going out to put pressure on him. One was Cameron Smith.
Wow.
And the other one was myself. And he put it straight through the middle of us. So, it doesn't all go perfect for you throughout the whole season. And history shows that teams can turn it around.
Any lip from JT when he does something like that against you?
No, he's too humbled, Jonathan. So he would have done some celebrating. I think he was at the Mad Cow for 3 days.
I'm sure. But the one I was going to mention too was, I think Brisbane in 2006 lost 5 games in a row post Origin, and they went on to beat the Storm in the
formula.
grand final. That's it. All right. Yeah, no one, I think, is writing the Panthers off. Billy, will we see a better try, given the circumstances, than the one we saw at the end of the game in Canberra on Thursday night? And a second question there, a second part to the question, will we see a better celebration from a coach after a match-winning try? They were great scenes in the nation's capital.
So good, isn't it? It's so good. It's so good to see a coach wear his heart on his sleeve and just put it all out there, and nothing is hidden from Ricky Stewart. It just goes to show that if you're an NRL fan and you've got your team, or you're a coach, or you're a player on the field, never give up. It is never over. It is never over. And Sebastian Chris's effort to go from the left-hand side of the field, chase the football, and score the try on the right-hand side of the field, just never give up. You don't know what's going to happen, and play the game right to the death, and that's what they did. That was pretty much their last play of the game. It was the 5th tackle, minute and a half to go. They probably weren't going to get the ball back in good field position, and Fogarty just got the ball to one of his X factors in Hudson Young, and he broke a couple of tackles, offload, got the ball to another X factor in Xavier Savage, who puts in a little kick, bounce goes their way, flick pass around the back, offload, and a bloke that come from the other side of the field scores a try to win the game. Like that's just a great example of never giving up and keep fighting. You never know what's going to happen, and it was great scenes down in Canberra on Thursday night.
Yeah, most definitely. Well done to Ricky Stewart and the Raiders. Now, Brisbane on Saturday night, they had a bit of a scare early on against the West Tigers, who you've got to say, well done to them. Just kept trying, undermanned the whole night. But Brisbane, a couple of their big guns really stood up against the Tigers in front of a great crowd of over 40,000 on the weekend.
Yeah, that's what happens when you've got 600 games of NRL experience in your halves, and it was purely those two with their smarts and their kicking game that just gave the Broncos the edge. And it was 12-all just before halftime. The Tigers they're doing a lot right, and listening to Benji Marshall after the game, he was really proud of his team. The scoreboard didn't reflect that, but he was really proud of his team, and so he should be. They're doing a lot right. They went into the game without Jerome Luai, the big signing. He was their experience in the halves, and they had very inexperienced half. Lockie Galvin and young Fahimi, who went off halfway through that game as well. But it was Adam Reynolds and Ben Hunt, and it was just before halftime. The scores are locked at 12-all, and he goes for a 2-point field goal and nails it. That gave his team the mental edge going into halftime to be up by 2 points. Then they come out from halftime and Ben Hunt kicks a 40-20. Bang, another mental edge for his team. Moments later, Adam Reynolds puts a chip over the top and scores under the post. All of a sudden, from the game being leveled just before halftime to just after halftime, their team are 8 points in front. Then they can just be free and play their football. And I know Adam Reynolds went off the field after that, but he did his job. He did his job. He set his team up. He put them in the frame of mind to go and play their football. He took the pressure off them. And the two veteran halves, they set that game up for their footy team. And they've got the class off the back of that to go on with the game. But, they're going okay, the Broncos. They're still a fair bit to improve on, which is great for the team and the coaching staff to work on. But, they're two halves. They're good to watch.
Yeah, most certainly. All right, this is the Billy Slater podcast, and it's all thanks to Tab.
Fans always ask, Lozza, what was the best era of league? And I tell them, nothing beats the line-breaking, flick-passing, goose-stepping, Vegas-flying, turbo try-scoring, origin drought-breaking, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more market stats and insights, it's easy to enjoy the best era in footy with the best app in footy.
Tab. We're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Time now on the Billy Slater podcast for this week's Billy M Medal, the best player and the best team each week, all thanks to Tab. Billy, best team in round 5.
Oh, the best team in round 5. I can't give it to the Bulldogs 3 weeks in a row, can I? That's. I'm going to put a line through the Bulldogs. They can't get it this week, although they were really good. I'm going to go with the Parramatta Eels. Parramatta Eels. They've been fighting hard the last few weeks. Jason Riles, first year in the head coaching role, and they had to fight back. 12 points down, and they fought back and they won it in Golden Point. Zach Lomax coming in for the field goal. So, yep, that's the team of the week, the Parramatta Eels.
Billy, before we get to the player of the week, you guys touched on this on the footy show yesterday, what Dylan Walker's addition to the team has done with Parramatta and helping Dylan Brown as well. I know that's not the whole reason why he's there, but we saw, is it no coincidence that Dylan Brown all of a sudden plays his best game of the year with Dylan Walker in the team?
Yeah, we're just talking about Jason Riles, and he's made some decisions this week that have really impacted their game. Obviously, the signing of Dylan Walker, he's a player. Look, he's won a premiership in the centres. He's got that speed and that leg speed to make himself dangerous with the football as a runner. Then you've got his ball playing ability, and what that does is when you've got a 13 that comes on the field and that's used in that link role, that can just free up your halves. Dean Hawkins still developing his game and not a noted game manager, experienced game manager like an Adam Reynolds or someone. And then Dylan Brown can just be a runner. Dylan Brown can play that second receiver role off the back of Dylan Walker. There's bloody a lot of Dylans around at the moment. So, they just complement each other, and that's what you see what Kurt Mann does for the Bulldogs. Isaiah Yeo does it for Penrith. Trent Liero does it for Melbourne. They just act as a link guy that can get the ball to these classy players without the classy players coming in and stifling their attack. So it just frees up the attack a lot more when you've got a 13 that can can play with the football. Now, there were a few things that Jason Ryles did. He tweaked. He started Jermaine Hopgood at dummy half. So they were bigger, they were more physical coming up against the Dragons. That was a great coaching move for the first 20 minutes. And he also put Will Penasini back to the right-hand side. He's been playing on the left. A lot of defensive errors in and around that left-hand side. So he's changed things up. And I like it because if you do the same thing, you can't expect a different result, right? So he's changed things up and tinkered with his footy team, and things are starting to work for him. And they're working pretty hard. They've done that the last few weeks. So just these little coaching decisions can make a big impact.
Yeah, well explained now. Well, let's get on to the best player of the round for the Billy M. So quite a few put their hand up over the weekend.
Yeah, have to go all the way back to Thursday night. And for the Raiders, it is Hudson Young. I thought he was great. He not only just scored, he scored a couple of tries, and he always works hard. He's always in the picture when there's a try being scored against him. But when the game was on the line, you go to your X Factor players, and that's who Jamal Fogarty went to. Last tackle, game's on the line, last play of the game, Hail Mary. Who do we give it to? Give it to Hudson Young. He created the line break, and then he created an offload that got the ball the opportunity to get over the other side and scored the try. So, no, I thought he was brilliant. He's having a great season. Obviously had a big off season, and yeah, he's playing well. So, player of the week, Hudson Young.
Win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
All right, Billy, let's get into our viewer questions or listener questions, depending on how you're getting the podcast each and every week. Now, Jackie says, hey, Billy, do you think it's time the bunker/video ref can start ruling on forward passes when tries are scored? There are a number of contentious passes that resulted in tries over the weekend. We alluded to this question a little bit earlier. What's your take on it?
I'm going to say no. I don't think we need that. Unless we've got a camera that is going to go along the sideline and follow the exact line of the football, I don't think we can rule on it. I think the touch judges have got the best view, and they very rarely get it wrong. They're pretty good. So, I've got the question mark over Latrell Mitchell's pass to win the game against the Roosters. I think that was forward, but I'm happy to wear a mistake here and there when we get it right 99% of the time. And I think there would be more controversy if we do sit there and analyze it on television and go and replays that aren't directly in line with the pass. I think we'll have more controversy over that.
Well, you don't want it to slow down like it does in English Premier League sometimes with the VAR, and they draw the lines along the screen and try to match it up like Pythagoras' theorem and all that sort of stuff. All the geometry sets that got to come into play. I don't think.
There's other elements. Yeah, there's other elements that come into it too, Salty. There's the momentum of the runner and how fast they're going. That's certainly an element. You think about if you're driving in a car and you throw something out the window, which I don't condone littering.
Yes, no.
If you throw something out the window, even if you throw it backwards, it's going to go forwards depending how fast you're going. So there's other factors that you have to factor into it, and that's where the human element of being the touch judge, they can read that. They can read whether it's gone backwards or whether it's gone forwards, irrelevant of where the ball ends up. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well explained. Now, Mackenzie, thanks, Jackie, for that question, by the way. And Mackenzie, hi, Bill. You've touched on this, Billy, but we'll bring it up again. What advice would you give to the Panthers to get them out of their form slump? And what would Melbourne do when you find themselves in a rare slump like this?
What advice would I do for the Panthers? You know what I'd do with the Panthers? I'd go back and watch some of their great performances and just watch what they're doing well. Forget about the stuff that you're dropping the ball and the defensive errors and all this sort of stuff. Go and watch some of your best performances and try and train that and replicate that. And that's all they need to do. That, like, it's not that far away. If they've just got to be in a positive frame of mind, get a couple of key players back and be positive about moving forward. You can't sit in the 4 losses in a row. You can't sit in that. If you sit in that, you'll stay in that. So, you've got to think forward and think positive and think about your best footy.
All right, Tom Sampson sends this one through. What is the week like at Melbourne training after a loss? To come back from their defeat to the Dragons and do what they did against Manly at Brookvale is very impressive. I don't think the Storm have lost back-to-back games in 2 and a bit years. Good question, Dom.
It's focused and it's intense. That's what it is. No one likes losing, and in particular when you're so accustomed to winning and you hold high standards. And look, the winning and losing is a result, and it's the outcome. The disappointment comes with the action, and I think of Craig Bellamy and the great coaches, and no one likes losing, but it's the actions that come with it. Like, I've been a part of losing teams, and we've put in so much and done so much well, and you're actually really proud. So, you've nearly got to ignore whether you won or lost and really just focus on what you were trying to achieve with, your game and the actions of your game. And when you lose, more times than not, your actions weren't great. So it's actually the disappointment of not performing the actions that you set out to perform, and then you work out the reasons why. So, but the 2 main things I see at Melbourne training when they go through a loss is just the intensity's up and they're super focused. And that's what they were during the week. I saw that during the week leading into Manly, and I was actually really confident going to Manly that Melbourne were going to perform really well. And it didn't surprise me that they put so many points on, because it was a nice day, a good track, and the mindset that the Melbourne Storm were in with their classy players. I could see that coming.
Yeah, we heard about your confidence on the way to the ground, because Joey in commentary mentioned that he was your Uber driver to get
he was.
You and Cam to Brookie yesterday. What state was the car in?
New South Wales.
No, cleanliness.
Yeah, no, I had a bit of sand. Smelled like wetsuits, but that's what you get when you go with Joey. So
yes,
no, it was. He did ask, what we thought of the game and where we thought it was going to go, and I think my words were, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 24-0 at halftime to Melbourne. And I just knew the mood that they would have been in after that disappointment against the Dragons. They get Jerome Hughes back, a guy that played for the Melbourne Storm in his debut, Moses Leo. I thought he was really good as well. Played in the centres. It was his first game of rugby league for about 5 years. Debut in the NRL. Has actually got a really good story. He was contracted to New Zealand Rugby, and they actually weren't going to grant him a release to come and fulfill a dream of playing in the NRL that he had, and a real drive to get over here and give it a crack. And he actually went down to Wellington and pretty much knocked on the door of New Zealand Rugby's headquarters and said, I really want to go. This is what I want to do, and pleaded with them to give him a release. And this story was told the night before his debut on Sunday, and by his uncle. And New Zealand Rugby granted him that release to go and chase a dream of his. And he's had a few hiccups in the preseason with some niggling injuries, but I tell you what, he really took his opportunity, and he's going to be a player. You can see the speed that he possesses, and he's going to continue to get more experience and develop his defensive side of the game, which is quite hard in the centres. But I thought he was great in his debut game, and look forward to watching him in many more.
Yeah, another terrific story. All right, let's get on to... and by the way, thanks for all those questions. And if you've got a question for us, email us, billyslaterpodcast.com at 9.com.au. That's billyslaterpodcast at 9.com.au. Round 6, Billy, kicks off with... we've got 2 games in a row at Suncorp Stadium this Thursday and Friday night. But the Thursday game... One of these teams will get their second win of the season. Dolphins take on the Panthers on Thursday night footy.
They're both 1 win from 5 games, aren't they? It's hard to believe that we're talking about the Panthers in that fashion. But, it's going to be it's an interesting game because I feel the Dolphins played their best football last week, and they're a difficult team to beat when they play their best football. But I've just got this feeling that the Panthers are going to turn it on. Dylan Edwards come back. Cleary's been back for a week. He'll be sitting in disappointment from last week, and a little bit like the Melbourne Storm. I just feel that they're going to bounce back sooner rather than later, and it might just be this Thursday night. So there's a lot of question marks around both teams' performance and how they're going to turn up, but I'm going to be up there on Thursday night, and it's going to be a great battle, and look forward to it. Isaiah Katoa, who would have spent a lot of time with Nathan Cleary at the Panthers through that junior development system, comes up against the best halfback in the competition, and he is playing wonderfully well. He's really developed into an elite half of the NRL, and there's going to be some great battles, and that's certainly one of them.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Some interesting clashes over the weekend. We've got Cronulla and Manly going head-to-head. That's a big game for both clubs.
That's in Perth. There's 2 Perth games. There's that game, and the Cowboys play the Rabbitohs.
That's right.
Over in Perth, doubleheader at Optus Stadium, which will be at Optus Stadium in the middle of the year for the Origin. So, rugby league is thriving over in the West. They usually get big crowds over there.
All right, looking forward to that doubleheader over the weekend. And Storm play the Warriors on Sunday. We won't bring up the stat that our mate Andrew tried to bring up about the
bogey team.
16 in a row it is.
I know where he was going with it.
Michael Witt's heroics.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
There's always a great battle, and it's always a really good atmosphere at Amy Park when the Warriors come to town. There's a big Kiwi contingent down in Victoria, and there's a lot of Pacific Islanders, and they all turn out and they love their rugby league, and it's always a big crowd. And when the Warriors come to town, it's the atmosphere is high. So looking forward to that one. And they're going well, the Warriors.
Yeah, they certainly are. Round 6 of the NRL will be with us on Thursday night. Billy, have a good week. We'll see you at Suncorp.
Thanks, Aldi.
Thanks, Billy. That is Billy Slater. I'm Peter Basoldis. This has been the Billy Slater Podcast. All thanks to Tab.